Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home. If you happen to be one of the West Virginians randomly selected to participate in the match survey, I encourage you to take the time to share your health experiences. You can take the survey online, by mail, or even over the phone. You can learn more about the match survey by visiting wvmatchsurvey.org. That's wvmatchsurvey.org. Or you can call 304-581-1928. That's 304-581-1928. We appreciate your time and help in making West Virginia a better place.
All right, Karen, and happy holidays to you.
It is the season.
This season, early November, before Thanksgiving, everyone's favorite holiday, hunting season.
Yes, hunting season is upon us, and I know there's a lot of people that are getting ready to go out and go hunting. So we wanted to talk a couple things about hunting safety, starting with the actual act of hunting and following it up with making sure that your meat stays safe. But we want to start off with the balance of hunting to keep our ecosystems safe and healthy.
Yeah, so there are some benefits of hunting. You know, when we talk about the conservation programs that we have, agencies that fund good things for the environment and the ecological balance of things, because hunting's so regulated and because there's a sale for licensing and permits, there's habitat stamps that provide funds to wildlife research. The money that typically is generated by these hunting programs through, I guess, mainly licenses and permits, fund these different things as far as being able to preserve species, battle invasive species. On that note as well, with the regulation of hunting and with the research that goes into it as far as balancing it to maintain healthy populations, that is something that is always weighed out. You know, we look at carrying capacity, we look at the habitat, we look at where we want the habitat to be, whether things are getting a little out of control and you have one species dominating various other species and causing an imbalance there. Hunting and regulating what to hunt and when to hunt it is a great way to be more sustainable in a sense and balance that habitat for the ecology and for the diversity that we enjoy.
Most definitely, yeah. And, you know, hunters a lot of times will get a bad rap, right? Because, you know, they're out there and they're killing Bambi, right? But one of the things that gets overlooked is the importance of managing those populations to keep them healthier. Hunters are some of the biggest supporters of wildlife protection programs and management programs. And so they are actively participating in maintaining that ecosystem balance between prey and predator. And because we have removed so many of our native predators, because we want to keep our livestock safe and our kids safe, you know, that seems logical to me. But because we have removed those predators, we have to now replace them. Now, there is overhunting that occurs. And that's why Dan was talking about all of the regulations associated with hunting. So wildlife biologists have spent a lot of time researching proper balances and carrying capacities. And carrying capacity is basically making sure that there aren't too many mouths for the amount of food that's available and keeping that in balance. And so hunters act as the predator in this case for those prey animals to help keep populations in balance. And keeping those populations in balance means that we have healthier forests and healthier ecosystems because deer, for example, aren't out there eating all of the forest regeneration and making it so new baby trees can't grow up to be big adult trees, which makes me very sad, as you all know.
Yeah, I wonder. So, Karen, tell me, like, what's the cutoff between a baby tree and an adult tree? No, I'm just
Oh,
teasing
you
you.
really don't want me to go down that path. That's a whole show in and of itself.
Yeah, it takes trees quite a long time to grow up.
That it does.
But you're right about one thing. As far as the deer population, they are rapid reproducers, and they can really outcompete most wildlife that's been out there for a while. Areas that are known not to have too much hunting, where deer populations really increase, like the suburbs of many large cities. The browse line just devastates a forest where there is absolutely nothing. Not only can you see the browse line where the deer can just nip at the food, but they actually ate it all down to where there's no greenery left.
The problem is it's not always that there's no greenery left. It's that the greenery that is left is bad greenery. It's invasive species like Japanese barberry, boxwood, garlic mustard, and all of those things that are causing problems because they're not good wildlife habitat food, and there isn't that balance because, we think of predator-prey. We should also think of prey and plants because the plant life need that control to grow as well. And so if nothing is eating them, then, there's an imbalance again. And so when you have a heavy deer population, and we don't even have to go to the suburbs of big cities, we can head up the hill to Ogilvy Park and we can see the devastation that has occurred to those natural forest lands in relation to the heavy deer populations that are there. And when you are above your carrying capacity, it doesn't just affect the health of the forest, it also affects the health of the animal.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that our urban and suburban deer populations get to such high populations is because loving and caring, but not understanding people often go out and feed the deer. They'll put out corn, or they'll even go up and open their trunk full of, feed corn and whatnot. And they sell it at the store, so it must be okay.
Yeah, they'll plant hostas, right? They'll plant hydrangeas.
Yeah, that too.
It's not all purposeful.
But, it's whenever you have a good, healthy diet, especially as a deer, you have more babies and your babies survive more. And next thing you know, there are so many babies that are turning into adults that you have exponential growth, and then the area can no longer support. And then you start seeing these animals that are super scrawny. Their skeletons are showing through their fur. They have insect and parasite problems, and they're sharing diseases because they're all coming to the trunk of your car and eating corn out of it and sharing their saliva with one another. And so it's actually making the deer less healthy by feeding them. So here's my soapbox of don't feed wild animals. Yeah, I'm against feeding birds too, but I'm never going to convince you all of that. But can I please at least convince you to not feed the deer?
Yeah.
All right. So that soapbox is over.
Yeah. Now going back to the original point, hunters do allow for a population control, and hunting is a way to regulate that, whether it's doe season, buck season, or whatever. Even certain types of weapons, we can regulate the population to get it to where it's a little bit less impactful on a certain environment, or maybe we're trying to bring down the population or increase the population depending on what we're hunting, whether it's male or female.
Right. And the best way to bring down a population, if you have too many, is to take females when you're hunting. So removing does from a population is going to reduce the ability of babies to arrive, right?
That makes perfect sense. If you got $5 and 5 does, if you kill $4, I don't think you've affected the population as much as if you killed 4 does.
That's correct. That is correct.
Yeah, all right. This math is getting interesting. All right. But with that comes the sport of hunting, right? And a lot of people do enjoy going out there. It is an experience of nature and getting away from the day-to-day and kind of go back to a more primitive mindset.
Yeah, just getting away.
It's enjoyable.
Do some forest bathing while you're out there.
But the idea is no matter what you do, you want to enjoy it and do it safely.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want to ruin anybody's holiday this year, so let's talk about very simple things you can do while you're out there hunting and or hiking this hunting season that can help keep you safe. And let's talk about the color blaze orange. I mean, it is a highly visible color. It is the recognized color for being in a hunting environment. So if you're out, even not hunting, but hiking, making sure you're wearing blaze orange, that your kids are wearing blaze orange in a hunting area, or they just stay away from hunting areas this time of year, especially at those times where people are more likely to be there hunting. Now, most of the urban, suburban park areas, you don't have hunting, and so that's not really an issue. But let's just say that you have a friend's farm that you usually go to go hiking. Hunting season is not the time to head out to the woods with your dog. There's a lot of accidents that could happen, and avoiding those areas is just an easy way to reduce the potential of getting hurt.
That's absolutely right. So hunters are waiting to hear noises, smells, whatever, mainly noises, right? Deer are pretty camouflaged, so they're hard to spot. So we rely on noises. So if you're walking, making some rustling sounds, that could be a bad situation. If you have an animal doing the same thing, that could potentially be worse because it would mimic more the sound of another quadruped like a deer. For instance, if it's a dog. So you could put those orange vests on the animal too, and that way the hunter can see that it's not just a brown four-legged animal. Now it's a brown four-legged animal with an orange vest. Chances are that the hunter's going to know it's not a deer.
Right. And there's something to be said on both sides of that argument. Whenever I was in forestry and we were out cruising timber, and, one of my partners, well, she always brought her dogs with her. And there was an accident. The dog went off over the hill and the dog was shot and died. And it was a terrible, terrible day. The hunter took off running, but the dog could have been wearing orange. But also, as a hunter, you need to make sure you are clearly identifying your target before you pull that trigger, because you don't want it to be something that you're not trying to kill. It could be another person. It could be someone's pet. It could be a non-target species. Whatever it is, you need to have a clear shot on that animal before you pull that trigger.
Right. And let's not forget, if you are leasing a ground to hunt, you don't know how many people are going to be on there. You don't know who's allowed to be there, who's not allowed to be there. So take extra precaution in certain situations that you might be unfamiliar.
Yeah, and do not go onto someone's land without them knowing you're there. Even if you always get permission from the same farmer who lets you out on their land every single year, you don't get carte blanche to go out anytime. You should contact that landowner and say, hey, is it okay if I come out and hunt this weekend? Because they may have family in. They may be taking their grandkids out hiking and not expecting you to be there. You need to make sure that you're working with the landowner. And if you are a landowner, be aware that there may be people who should not be on your property, and take adequate protections.
Right. So that does lead us right into some safety tips for the hunter this time, as opposed to the non-hunter visiting or potentially visiting. But if you are hunting, again, just the same as if you were not hunting, always tell somebody where you're going to be, when you're going to return, just so there's at least some accountability of where you are and where you're supposed to be.
Right, because cell phones don't always work back in the deep woods, especially if you're in a valley. So make sure people know where you are going to be. Old-fashioned stuff here. Tell people where you're going to be and when you expect to return. If you're going to be gone for a couple days, especially let somebody know about where you're going to be, because if you don't come back after a couple days, they're going to need to send out a search party. And the smaller area they have to search to find which tree stand you fell out of, the better result you're going to have as far as your long-term health. Right.
And these things happen. You're in the woods. Sometimes you're alone. Not always. I guess it's better not to be alone, but sometimes you are, and things can happen. And if somebody knows where you're going to be, they're more timely in their rescue.
Right.
Now, another thing, kind of mitigating a potential bad incident is just simply check the weather report. Know what you're getting into, the chances of bad weather, and that you have the appropriate gear to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable, so you're not walking into a bad situation unprepared.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, make sure you have adequate water and snacks to get you through the amount of time that you're going to be out there, especially if you think you may get delayed on your return. Carrying one of those little water filters is a great option. They're lightweight, they don't take up much room. They're a little expensive to buy up front, but they do last for quite a while. It is much better to use one of those little filters rather than drink straight from a stream. There are pathogens and parasites in our stream water. Please don't think just because it looks pretty and looks clear that it is pathogen free, because I can pretty much guarantee you if it's surface water, it's not. So definitely take one of those little water filtration systems with you. You can go a little while without food, but water is definitely a necessity if you somehow get stranded out in the woods.
That's a great point. And we always worry about livestock manure runoff, but there are wildlife manure runoff as well.
Oh, this is true. This is true.
And with the deer population that we have,
You know, where if a bear poops in the woods and all that.
well, hopefully the bear's not around when you're hunting in that area.
Unless you're hunting bear, but you know.
Right. Anyway, be familiar with the area you want to hunt.
Yes.
Know where the borders are, where maybe high walls, wells.
Abandoned wells are a big danger out there. So make sure you're just being aware and observant. I mean, even just a rock, a rock covered in moss or a log covered in moss is super slippery. You could easily fall. Be aware of your environment, where you're going, and make sure that you have good shoes on so that you have solid footing. And of course, that they're warm enough.
That's right. Always be prepared if you need to change of clothes. It's better having too much than too little. And just have a first aid kit, a tourniquet. I know that sounds extreme, but that will save your life quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If something really bad happens, tourniquets aren't big, they're not bulky, they're not heavy. They'll save your life. And just have a good first aid kit and just know how to do certain things.
Yeah.
You're going in the woods. It's a high risk type of activity. Bad things can happen, right?
Right. And so, one of the worst things that can happen when you're out in the woods is falling out of a tree stand. And unfortunately, that's one of the most common things that happen. When you're climbing into your tree stand, you should make sure that your gun is unloaded so that you don't slip and have an accidental discharge. Also, when you're up in your tree stand, make sure that you wear a harness so that if you do slip, you don't fall all the way to the bottom of the tree. But also, look at the tree. I mean, this is something that I'm going to talk to you about as a forester. If you have a general idea of what chicken in the woods looks like, do not ever climb a tree that has chicken of the woods growing on it, because it is a brown rot and it will take away all of the structural integrity of that tree. So if it has chicken of the woods growing on it, do not put your tree stand in that tree. Do not try to climb that tree to get your tree stand down if you've noticed that particular mushroom growing on it. There are some other mushrooms that you should be aware about, but that's a really bad one. If you have that growing on your tree stand tree, it is not a good tree for your tree stand.
That's a really good point. Mushrooms are decomposers, and I'm sure some of them are worse than others.
Yeah, ones that cause a brown rot, they eat the cellulose, and it just becomes this brittle mess inside that tree. And it could look fine on the outside, but be very weak and structurally unsound on the inside. And so, look for broken branches. If that tree's gotten struck by lightning since you were there last time, always readjust tree straps. If it's been left up, make sure that the strap is still sound and that your hardware that you're using to put the tree stand in the tree is still sturdy and strong.
Very good tip. All right. And also check and see, make sure you have the right gun, the right bow, whatever it is for the occasion, and that you are complying with those guidances laid out by ODNR or I guess any Department of Natural Resources, depending on what state you're in. These regulations, again, are there for a reason, and that's what other people expect. So there won't be any bad surprises all the way around.
Right.
Now let's transition here. You've done all your safety checks. You told somebody where you're going to be. You put up the tree stand away from any decomposing trees. You are wearing your orange.
Practicing good gun safety.
You got your got your first aid kit and everything. And okay, you get you shoot a deer and got your first kill. Now, what next, Karen? What are some things we need to think about when we are harvesting that animal?
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about food safety here. All right, because you think about food safety in the kitchen, but food safety starts at the farm, or in this case, in the forest. And when you first get that animal, contamination can occur through that initial wound, as well as during any field dressing, the handling of the animal, or transportation of that animal. So bacteria exist everywhere, right? They are everywhere. Now, not all of them are bad, but they are everywhere. And whenever you have a environment where you have the proper temperature, you have moisture available, and you have nutrients available, those bacteria are going to breed and reproduce, and they're going to grow most rapidly in temperatures between 40 and 140 degrees. So you take down that animal, their temperature is in that perfect bacterial growth zone. So you have to be careful with this. And when you are getting this animal back home and processing it, there's a common misbelief that chilling or freezing will kill these bacteria, but it's simply not true. Freezing can prevent the growth or the replication because you're out of that 40 to 140 degree range, but that doesn't mean it kills them. They're just kind of sleeping.
Right.
Think of it that way. They've gone dormant. And whenever it warms back up, then they'll start reproducing again. So your objective here is going to be to make sure that whenever you're working with that animal, this is the most important thing, your hands are clean. Whenever you go to process that meat, make sure that your hands are clean, that your utensils are clean. That is the most important thing anytime you're working with any kind of food is clean hands. Did I say that enough? Should I say it again? Clean hands.
Well, I just try to keep things as clean as possible. I do want to emphasize something that Karen said. Just like with cold weather or cooler temperatures will slow down the rate of bacterial reproduction. There is something called a temperature danger zone right between 40 and 140, and that's when bacteria can replicate the quickest. Obviously, going towards 140, it's going to be faster than at 40 degrees. But if you think about it, it slows things down. Your refrigerator is meant to slow down bacterial growth. That's why things will keep for longer, but they will not keep forever.
Right.
And you have to remember that. We're talking about buying some time so that things don't spoil. The longer you can keep it in cooler temperatures, the better off you're going to be.
Right. And I do want to point out, though, that spoilage bacteria, or the things that make your food go bad and get funky colors and odors or sliminess, those aren't the same bacteria that make you sick. So E. coli, salmonella, those are not going to cause your meat to look funky. So I just want you to know that. They are very different groups, and you cannot tell if your meat has E. coli or salmonella on it unless you're going to do a test kit from a lab and actually look for those particular growths. So you can't see salmonella and E. coli on your meat. You can't tell when it has been contaminated. So all you can do is try to prevent the contamination by having good food safety practices. Now, I do want to say that there is something that can occur on meat that can be controlled by freezing, and that is Trichonella. Now, this is a disease that used to be common on pork, but Trichonella is common in wild boar and bear. And so if you are hunting for boar or bear, freezing that raw meat for at least 3 weeks can kill that parasite. However, cooking it also does as well. So making sure you're cooking your meat to your proper temperatures can also protect you. So don't eat pork or bear raw in the woods, okay? So another thing to think about is even after your food is cooked, you can still have the potential of things like Clostridium botulinum and Clostridium perfringens, which are, if you've ever heard of botulism poisoning, this is where it comes from. So it's a spore-forming bacteria, and if it is kept in an anaerobic environment, it can form this toxin that can really put you in the hospital. And we'll just put it that way because there's no other way to say. So if your meat isn't properly chilled and stored after cooking, you can still have these dangers. So after 2 hours has passed, you need to get your food in the refrigerator, cooling down. You want it cooled as quick as possible. And so as soon as you're done eating, clean up, put the food away. And, you can go back to clean the kitchen later if you're having a good time and want to hang out with your family. But get the food put away. That's going to help keep everybody safe whenever they have those leftover sandwiches the next day. And also another thing, when you're out hunting, going to call back to when I said you want to make sure you have a good, clear shot. Because if you don't get a good kill shot on that animal and it takes off running and you got to chase it down, the meat is going to be darker and it could have a different texture. It could be tougher. And in general, it's not as good of a quality. If the animal goes through high stress right before it dies, then it's not good quality meat. And so one of the things that the meat industry does a really good job at is making sure that the animals are calm at the time of slaughter. So that helps to improve the meat quality. But when you're out hunting, you want to get that good clear shot, because not only is it going to decrease your meat quality and make you have to run and go find that animal, it's going to increase the potential for bacterial growth in that meat as well. So there's a lot of things to take into account.
Yeah, be safe out there.
And thank you again for tuning in. If you have some extra time, we would really appreciate some feedback on the show. There is a link in the podcast, but if you're listening live, just shoot Dan or I an email or give us a call at our local extension offices to let us know what you enjoy. And also, if you have any suggestions, we would love to hear from you. COVID-19 vaccination protects you and those around you. When communities are vaccinated, fewer people get sick. Community immunity begins with each one of us. Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.